All right, everybody, welcome to the High Quality Fun podcast. Today we have an old neighbor of mine, Jacob, on. He's going to tell us about this adventure race that he did. Jacob and I used to live next to each other in Michigan. Him and his wife moved next door, and just having like a similar age person, similar interests and whatnot, we kind of hit it off with them right away. And they now have moved out to Arkansas, which we are now at their apartment in Arkansas, just visiting them for the weekend. We loaded the kids up, did a 15 hour drive all the way out here, and just have been catching up and enjoying our time out here. Did I miss anything, or did that kind of cover the little brief introduction of you?
I think the part there that you missed was that loading up to under 2.5. That's a lot of high quality fun right there.
Yeah, it went really well, actually. We loaded up at 1 o'clock, and that kind of timed out with both their naps. And then we drove. They woke up, kind of fed them dinner. They were up for a few hours, and then, I don't know, they kind of struggled to go back to sleep for their main nap. And we ended up, what did we arrive at, 3 a.m.
It was almost 4, pushing 4
yeah,
4 a.m.
Those last few hours were pretty brutal, but you guys got a beautiful house here, and it's been very accommodating to be able to throw the girls in different rooms and sleep and whatever, and y'all have been very helpful with them out here, so definitely a little bit of a home away from home, being able to come out here, and now we get to catch up.
Yeah, let's do it.
Yeah, so you did this adventure race out here, and I've purposely not wanted to hear anything about this. I know the very basis of it, but it sounds like this was a cool thing you volunteered for that potentially sucked ass. So yeah, just tell me everything about it, how you heard about it, and maybe you can go into what led you to this. Why was this fun for you?
Yeah. It was a time for sure. But I'll start with just talking through some of what led me to initially being interested in this adventure race, and then ultimately deciding to go forward with it. So this was probably back several years ago when I was in college. A number of my buddies had started getting into road racing, whether it be most of them started with half marathons, and then some of them started to get into doing full marathons. And I kind of thought to myself, holy shit, my buddies are doing these types of things that I'd never known anybody who'd ran a marathon before, or it was somebody who I knew that was maybe crazy fit. But learning that some of my buddies in college were doing this, I'm thinking my gosh, you guys, I feel like you're struggling to get to class because you're too hungover for the night from the night before. But sure enough, they'd managed, and it really kind of gave me a bit of a bug. And so decided to sign up for my first half marathon. This would have been in the fall of 2018. Ran my first one, and it was just such an incredible experience. First of all, through the training, really saw a lot of positive body transformation, but then also that feeling that I got when I finished, it was unlike anything that I'd ever felt before. Even playing competitive sports, earlier on in high school, it was just a sense of accomplishment that I had never achieved before in my life. And so immediately after that, I was hooked. I knew then that there would be a future for me to be competitive athletically, beyond what I thought might have essentially ended when I was in high school. And so
what sports did you do in high school? So you didn't have really a running background, but
no.
When I met you, it was after 2018, and
yeah,
you were already really into running at that point. So what did you do in high school that this was so new for?
Yeah. So I grew up with football being my primary sport. However, when I was a freshman in high school, I sustained an injury to my knee the very last game of the season. This is essentially a break of the head of my femur. And so that had me out for a few months, and then as we began training then, once I recovered from my knee injury, we began training with weights for the next season in the spring. And I actually sustained a stress fracture to my L5 vertebrae. And so it was after that I just decided, you know what, this is taking too much of a toll on my body. I'm too young for this. And I decided to essentially leave football behind and then just focus on swimming. So like truly could not have been further from a running background with the vast majority of like how I'd then competed athletically all throughout high school. So quite a big change. Like I'd always been decently athletic, was an okay runner, but the idea of long distance running was never something that had crossed my mind, never something that was, interesting to me until, college came and my buddy started doing this. And I'm like, okay, like if they can do it, I can do it too.
I did cross country in high school and track, and I swam as well. And I still have not done a marathon. I signed up to run one, and in my training ran a half marathon. And then just because my buddies at the time weren't running with me, I just said, I'm not doing this by myself. Mm-hmm. So I've already kind of planted the seed. Maybe if I say it out loud on air, then I have to go forward with it. But I'm going to try to do one in May. It's been like a bucket list goal of mine. But anyways, carry on with your story.
Yeah. It really is like, totally different level of accomplishment to finish one of those. And, even my experience with a marathon was a little bit tainted because I had signed up to run my first one. This would have been in May of 2020. Well, everybody knows what happened in spring of 2020. And at that point, I was like deep into my training where, I'm going and doing like, I'm to the point where I'm doing like 16, 17, 18 mile runs. And my brother and I had actually signed up to run this marathon together. And we both just collectively agreed that, regardless of what happens, whether the race is, still on or not, we are going to run a marathon. Like we are going to make sure that we can cross that, line out in our bucket list of saying, yes, we ran 26.2 miles. So the race ended up being canceled, lo and behold, and we decided then to just do it was about a 2-mile lap in my parents' neighborhood that we were going to run approximately 13 times. And like, it sounds horrible, and it was like, oh my gosh, it was I shouldn't say like totally terrible, because there was a lot of high quality fun in that too, but we'll have to save all that for another podcast. But
I feel like I lost count on the track running 2 miles. I can't imagine doing just like a 2-mile loop in a cul-de-sac 13 times.
It was so it did not make for a great race experience, but it was a strategic choice to make sure that like, if we got injured or like had some sort of issue, we would always loop back around. We did this at my parents' house, but like we would always every 2 miles have access to like water or like some food bathroom. Or first aid, bathroom, exactly. Because we didn't want to do some crazy course where we do like a giant loop throughout the city that we were living in, or something like out and back or anything like that. So yeah, we did that. We did the 2-mile loop. It was grueling, but we got it done. And so it was actually during that training for the marathon when I first learned about adventure racing. I remember, so I was living in Ohio at the time. That's also where my parents lived. That's where my brother and I did our marathon. And it was during the winter, and I was doing some running on the treadmill, and I decided, not the most fun. But I think I had, it was on Amazon Prime Video, and I had found this video series called The World's Toughest Race. And I'm thinking like, oh wow, like, that's kind of neat. Like, very much on the same theme of a lot of what I'm thinking about, what I'm doing, training for this marathon. And so I throw this on, and it was this show, for those who haven't seen it, it was a mini series of these, I think it was roughly like, there might have been 50 different teams from countries all over the world who were competing in this multi-day race covering hundreds of miles that was, essentially focused on like mountain biking, trail running, or like trekking, traversing, and then like some water element as well. There were other pieces that the folks in that show had competed in, like, rappelling like up a waterfall or down a cliff or something like that. So some of the stuff that they did was pretty extreme, but like I remember watching it and just thinking like, holy cow, like that would be something so cool to do someday. And like again, my environment at this time, it's probably January. I'm in Northwest Ohio, and there is nothing in terms of like any sort of elevation in Northwest Ohio, or not really much else elevation where I could do things like this anywhere around me. And so it was just kind of like a pipe dream at the time, like, oh yeah, something like that would be really, really neat to do. And then we fast forward 4 years later, and my wife and I are living in Arkansas, mountain bike capital of the world. And
is it really of the world?
Self-proclaimed.
Okay.
Self-proclaimed mountain bike capital of the world. Now, that is not meant to take away any credit from what they've been able to build up in this area, because it really is incredible. You got to check it out for the first time yesterday.
We went out yesterday. What was the park called?
We were at Slaughter Pen,
which is in
mountain bike parks, and that's in Bentonville, Arkansas.
Yeah, they had like, I don't know, they had training courses for dropping, so you could jump on this ramp and practice falling off a cliff safely. I'm exaggerating, but I thought that was pretty cool. They had pump tracks. They had like paved downhill courses where you're literally just riding bends and berms. And I like mountain biking, but I don't get to go a lot. We have decent trails in Michigan, and it was cool. It was really cool what they were building and what they had built out there. Definitely intimidating. Didn't get hurt, so that's good.
Yeah.
Hopefully while I'm still out here, we get a chance to go and do something again. I know he's got a trail right up the road here that's not as wild, but I don't know, just a fun sport.
Yeah, it's so incredible here to see the amount of just like time and investment that the area puts into these trails, because I was telling Tyler when we were out that like even in some of the most popular spots, like the most heavily traversed areas of the mountain bike park, like we saw multiple new trails under construction that
weren't there 2 weeks ago.
They were not there 2 weeks ago, the last time that I was out. So just really incredible to see. But yeah, back to like ultimately doing this adventure race. So this would have been probably about exactly a year ago. It would have been like in the fall of 2022. And I remember scrolling through Facebook and seeing something about this adventure Ozark race, and I'm thinking like, like that's interesting. Like, let's check it out. And ultimately, what it was a more like low key version of a bigger race that was called Expedition Ozark, which actually had some of the teams here competing in a 5-day adventure race that were included in that World's Toughest Race documentary. Okay. So like at the end of everything, like I actually got to like see some of these people, like got to chat with them a little bit. Like some of these same teams that were competing in this documentary that I had watched about adventure racing like 4 years before. So really cool to like come full circle there. But anyways, this adventure Ozark was a light version of the Expedition Ozark, if you will. And it was something where you could sign up. You had to sign up as a team. Like this is not a solo sport or endeavor, just because like it really would be too dangerous to go and try to do something like this by yourself. Because like it's a big time commitment. Like, it's some elements like you're pretty remote, and like you just need that support from at least one other person to be with you when you're doing something like this. And my buddy Brendan, who I work with, I met him.
Why don't you explain what the like what was the event? Because right now I'm still a little clueless to what it was, but sure. I know there's like 3 type. Go ahead and explain.
Yeah. So,
and then obviously we want to hear about Brendan.
The race itself, like so this would have been back when I first heard about it. I saw that it would be, oh my gosh, how was it described? It was pretty vague in terms of the amount of distance that would be covered. I think it said like approximately 40 miles of mountain biking, trail running, and paddling. And so like we knew they actually did even provide some splits for like roughly what to expect. So I think it was 26 miles of mountain biking, 10 miles of trail running, and then 4 miles of canoeing. Yep. So we kind of had an idea for what we were getting ourselves into. However, in the spirit of the adventure race, the rest of the information that was available was minimal at best. They gave a list of required gear that was literally like scrolling through multiple pages on my phone. I'm thinking like, holy shit, like how am I even going to carry all of this stuff? But ultimately it's like the reason they require it is back to the fact that like in some of these situations you are pretty remote and like you just have to be able to like essentially like survive if like something were to happen and you like, you know, get stranded. So like, you know, we had to bring things like wool jackets, wool hats. We needed to have a thermal blanket. We needed a whistle, a compass. Not a surprise there with the compass, but like truly a lot of like survival gear was required. We also had to, one of the other things that we needed to purchase was a UTM tool for like plotting coordinates on a map.
Like a GPS,
Yes.
off the grid GPS.
Like,
okay.
I've never done anything like this before. Like I remember even like the night before looking up YouTube videos on how exactly to use this thing because again, like I just didn't know like the full extent of what we were getting ourselves into.
We used one on an elk hunt I went on, and it was like simple to use, but it's so disconnected from the world. It's like hard to fully understand how to use this thing. I don't know. It's not intuitive since we're so used to our phone just being able to pull up a map and everything.
Right.
At this point, did they tell you that you had 8 hours to finish it, or did you find that out later?
We knew that 8 hours would be the maximal time that we would have to complete the race.
So you literally did not win if you did not beat it in 8 hours.
So the way that scoring ended up working was a combination of how many checkpoints, because that was another element of the race. Like there was, no set course, nothing like that. Like we knew a general area that we would be in, but like the way that it was laid out was we got there like morning of, and we were handed like basically a general map of it's probably like at least 50 square miles of territory covered on this map. So that way we'd have like a general idea of where we were at. And then a sheet full of hints that would give you a clue to where you could find the next checkpoint. Okay. And like, you know, again, like most of this stuff we were finding out the morning of the race.
Oh my God.
Yeah. So, really did not know what we were getting ourselves into, but it quickly fell into place about an hour before we went off on this thing.
Yeah, so tell me about the guy you did it with a little bit, and then why don't we just dive into it? You can just tell me how the day went.
About the race, yeah.
If there's more to talk about with the prep, it sounds like you were literally just given a laundry list and you kind of showed up to it.
Yeah. So my buddy who I did it with, his name was Brendan, and he's a guy who he and his wife actually moved here only about a month before Patricia and I did. So he also works for the same company that I do, and so it was like right off the bat, like similar in age, like kind of a similar situation. We like hit it off, and he'd actually been mountain biking for a long time, and like he moved here actually for the mountain biking.
Okay.
Like that was really like his main driver for getting to this area. For us, it has ended up just being like a perk that I've been able to benefit from. But like he and I had been getting out on the bike for a long time. He really got me into it, and it was when I came across this race, I sent it right to him, and he's like, "Oh hell yeah, man, I'm in." He's not a runner though, and so he's like, "I'm gonna have to do some training to get ready for the run there, but like bike, like we're on it, like we got that." And anyways, you know, he's like, I can remember we're texting each other back and forth, like in the days leading up to the race, just thinking like, okay, like, you bringing this, I'm bringing this, like just making sure that we have all the gear that's required. And then even like kind of just like we had like a continuous message flow going of the places where we expected we would be going during this adventure race, because like another thing that was required was a headlamp. And we're thinking like, oh my God, like they're going to send us underground. Like where in the world are we going to go underground? So we'll get to that in a minute.
Oh, God.
Anyways, yeah. So the day of the event, it was a little bit different in that we had to get there super early, just to be able to like receive all of our instructions for the day and the rest of, like these maps that they gave us. Whereas like in many of the races that I've done in the past, it's like with a road race, you basically just like show up, get to the front of the line before the race starts, and then as soon as your group goes or the gun goes, you're off. Whereas with this, we had almost, I think it was about an hour and a half worth of prep prior to the race even beginning. God. And some of that included time where it was after we'd received our map, after we'd received our like little hint sheet, where we had it was probably about 30 minutes where each team could then go and like read through the list of hints and look at the map.
Did you get the hints prior?
Only 30 minutes before we started. Okay. So like everybody was like blind in that sense. But then they gave us about another like 30 minutes there to like go through the hints, look at the map, and kind of like essentially plot our course for like, it was basically time to strategize for how you wanted to hit each of the checkpoints. Now there were some limits to how you could do that, because like the way that the race was set up was like maybe checkpoints 1 through 4, for example, like they would be highlighted with the same color, and that meant that like that section was just for running, or maybe like the next set would be just for biking, and then there was one section that was just for canoeing. So essentially what it did was it created some structure and some flow to how you would need to be pursuing these checkpoints.
So you could do 1 through 4 in any order, but you would do 1 through 4, then 5 through 8.
Exactly. Okay. So you could not go, run to checkpoint 1, run to checkpoint 2, and then try to bike to checkpoint 5. Okay, you would have to complete like each leg and knock all of them out before you could proceed into like the next, before you could transition, like whatever your mode of transportation was. So anyways, like it's really just kind of like frantic, and people are running around. It was wild because it was a morning when it was pretty cold out here in Arkansas. What time did you start? So the start time was 9 a.m., but like it was before 7 a.m. Like when we got there and like started getting all this stuff and like getting briefed on everything like with regard to what we should expect. But anyways, I was gonna say, like at the beginning, like it's not like you have a table or a desk or something that you can use to like lay out everything and like start to like have everything organized and map this all out. It's literally just like people gathered around each other, like
on your truck bed
or like just like on the ground, just like on the cement, like drawing on like their maps and whatnot. Another element of this that I should point out was that so again, in the spirit of adventure racing, no phones allowed. So each team was required to have at least one phone, just in case of an emergency, something like that. But anybody who carried a phone, they had a special bag that you'd have to place your phone in, and then they would seal it.
Oh, so if you broke just the seal, they would know that you cheated or something.
Exactly. Okay. Exactly. So it was their way to keep people honest. But anyways, that was like kind of all of what went into the beginning of it. And it was then right about 9 a.m., like shot the gun and we're off. And
so everybody started at one time.
Yep, exactly.
Okay, so let me just understand a little bit of this. You both had to bring a bike. You both had running, whatever.
Yep.
You had probably a whole hiking bag full of all of your stuff. And then I can't imagine you're carrying a canoe around. Did you just leave the canoe at a location and you came back and got it?
So with the canoe, it was a situation where there was only basically 2 transitions with the canoe, and the race team provided the canoe. So
Okay.
like the canoe portion was about mid race, and we were able to like drop our bikes off, get in the canoe, do the canoe portions, and then drop the canoe off, pick our bikes back up, and be on our way.
Okay. And I'm sure you'll talk more about that later.
Yeah.
But I was curious about that.
Yeah.
Okay. Cool. I don't want to like derail it and ruin anything. So just.
No, you're good. No, so
And you did start with everyone though. Like it was a race.
Everybody starts at the same time.
You could have been heading in the same direction, or like, there was no car element to this, right?
Nope.
So you're okay. Go ahead.
And it was, it was so funny was that at the beginning, most of the teams knew that like all of these. So we started off on foot, and all of the teams knew that the first like it was like 4 or 5 checkpoints would all be like fairly close to where we started. So it was like as soon as we began, it was like everybody scattered, like running in different directions. And what was also really funny about it was that so the race was like starting and finishing in downtown Bentonville, Arkansas, and so like it's a regular
You're in the city.
Sunday morning, and like there are people out like going to church, going to brunch, breakfast, whatever, and there's like these racers just like sprinting, like cutting across the street, cutting across lawns in town, just people running everywhere, and it was just like such a frantic start to the race. But each team had their own strategy for how they were going to be collecting checkpoints, and one of the things that was funny was like you had a rough idea of where to find each checkpoint, but then like each checkpoint then was really not all that easy to see, because the way that they had done it was just put this little like it almost looked like a box lantern or like a Chinese lantern sort of thing.
Okay.
That they would like either hang from somewhere, or sometimes it was just like put on the ground, and you had there was a little like puncher that was attached
like
to
a hole puncher?
Hole puncher that had a specific design, and then you also had a punch card.
That's how that corn maze was that I was talking about. You literally got like a moon punch.
Yeah. And so anyways, like we get through the first portion there, like things are good, get to the bikes, we're moving, and it was pretty hectic at the beginning, because again, like you've just started, like the teams are all like so like closely condensed to one another with regard to like how they're pacing, because like everybody's wanting to start off hot, and like for the most part, like a lot of the teams had like seen that the best strategy would be to follow the checkpoints like in a certain way, and so like it resulted in a lot of like groups moving together. Okay. And like it was just like one after the other. Like sometimes there'd be a line of a couple different people like at each checkpoint. But anyways, we
was this the running element or like the
both truly. So like there was some of this in like the first running portion of it, and then this sort of like theme of like people kind of like staying together like one after the other, like oh like they know where the next checkpoint is, like let's follow them. It just kind of like created this like chain effect of other people doing the same thing, just like follow the leader. But the first like probably hour and a half or so, it was a lot like this, where people are all moving together and whatnot. But then like I remember this was when we were the
Are you
bike
carrying
portion.
your bike with you this whole time? Or?
No.
Okay.
So like during the run portions, we would get the bikes to a place where they call it a transition area.
Okay.
So like we could leave our bikes, go run, and then we would come back to the bikes and like get back on them.
Okay, but you started with it and you had to go drop it off.
It was already dropped off before the race. I
Okay.
should have mentioned that.
Okay.
But no, so like the first big like snafu here of the race was, so my buddy and I, we are this portion of the race, we were leaving Bentonville and traveling north into the next town that was called Bella Vista, and we thought we could take this one bypass that would be a shortcut compared to the route that many of the other people were taking. And we're going, like we are cooking down this trail. thinking, we're just the smartest guys ever, gonna cut off all these people, and we get to a roadblock where like construction literally would not allow us to pass any further on this trail. And like, it was not even a situation of like, oh, like, you just go like mountain bike around it or walk around it. Like physically, like it was like a highway like divide. Like they just had not built a trail that could like go around it yet. And so we quite literally found ourselves in a position where we either would have to like, turn our bikes around and bike probably at least a mile back,
oh my gosh,
to get back on the trail where everybody else was going, or we could jump into this creek, hike across the creek, and then there was about oh my gosh, like the bank of it was huge, probably 8 feet tall, and get to the next trail over there where everybody else was, because ultimately, like, we saw a bunch of people as we were riding down our trail. They were on the other trail, and so we knew where they were, and it was really just this like little creek that had separated us. And so we're like, we're going the creek route. Like, it's going to take us way too much time if we have to go and bike back. And so he and I end up, like, we literally are putting our bikes, like, we're trying to like carry them over our shoulders, hiking through the water already, and we're like, motherfucker, like, how did this happen already? Like, so early into this race.
Yeah, how far are you to do this? How far are you into the race at this point?
Probably like an hour-ish. This was probably en route to like checkpoint 10-ish of about 30.
Okay.
And anyways, like, we get through this creek, and that wasn't even the hard part. The hard part was climbing back out, because it was like the way that the land was laid out. We could walk in on the side where we were, but then we had to like climb up this big embankment to get back up and get to the other trail. And surely enough, we did it. I don't know how like neither of us fell, but
was there stuff to grab onto, or are you just like hoisting each other up on this?
No, like there were like some roots and some rocks.
Okay.
So like that made it a little bit easier, but like immediately, coming from a position where like we were cooking at the start of this race, like we were like, probably one of the furthest people ahead at this point, to then have that big of a setback was like, shit, like, all right, what do we got to do to fix this? And so we get back on the bike, and we knew that the next portion would be a really bike heavy section of the race, which
was
like,
your strong point.
I had good biking legs, and that was where my buddy was really going to shine. Right. And so like, we knew that we'd be able to rely on that at some point here later, throughout the rest of the race. And
I'm just imagining that you're still kind of riding with everybody, and so you keep getting glances at each other throughout this, and all of a sudden they see you soaking from head to toe, and just wondering, like, I have no idea what happened to them, but we're ahead of them. Let's keep on going.
Yeah. It was like, I remember
with a sense of defeat on both your faces.
I remember like throughout our time riding there, like there were some people who were kind of yelling, and we didn't think much of it at the time. And
we're trying to warn you.
Yeah. And
oh my god.
Like, surely enough, yeah, it screwed us. But anyways, like, we weren't gonna let that ruin the rest of our day, and we got up, kept moving, and the next few sections, they were during some portions of the bike where it was a lot of like just grueling like uphill trail riding. And it was actually some trails that I'd ridden before, and like when my buddy and I hopped out on it, he and I had actually ridden this together, but we knew that like this next part was gonna suck. However, if it was gonna suck for us, like, we were in pretty good biking shape. We knew that this would be a heck of a lot worse for a bunch of other people. And so like it was freaking terrible. It was grueling. Like, I remember at one point like getting up like the last portion of like one of these little hills, and like I got probably the worst cramp I've ever had in my life in my left calf. And like it was something so bad where like I almost fell off my bike, because like I had to hop off and like go stretch it, and I just like ditched the bike immediately. But like it was really tough here, but we started to make up some ground.
Okay.
And it really really helped us like start to get out ahead of some people. And
are you climbing over roots and everything on this uphill, or is it just pretty steady flat?
At this point,
smooth.
At this point, we are like in the heart of Bella Vista, which in this area, like there's some pretty tough riding out there because it's all like really pure cross country riding, and with that, it's a lot of like, you know, there's a bunch of like rolling hills, and the trails are all weather trails out there, so meaning that like most of the trails are like pretty rocky. It's not so much dirt as you find like, you know, here in like some of the trails in Fayetteville where I live, or even up in like Slaughter Pen in Bentonville. Most of those trails are like nice and packed dirt, but up in Bella Vista it's all rock, and there's a lot of climbing. It's super pretty. It's a lot more like you're really immersing yourself in nature, but like it definitely demands a heightened level of physical fitness to ride that kind of stuff.
And that gets really like technical. You gotta maneuver around the roots and stuff. It's not just the the leg muscles to get up the hill.
Yeah. But anyways, yeah. So like we're starting to make up some ground here, and things are going well. And like just a little side note here, one of the things that was required for every team was they had to have food. Like bringing food was a requirement to just like make sure that like you have energy to continue the race, because like if you're out there for 8 hours moving the whole time, like your body is, you know, just it's gonna like take everything that you give it. And like it was funny at this point. It was shortly after we had finished this particular section of the bike, we got up into another like trail running portion, and at this point we're a couple hours into the race, and my buddy is like, dude, we got to eat. And like I'm kind of pushing back. I'm like, like I'm not that hungry right now. Like I had just like taken like a little goo packet. Like have you ever seen those? And like I was feeling fine. He's like, no, like we should at least eat something now, because if we don't, like it could be bad. And I will draw back to my marathon day here. So when my brother and I did our marathon in Ohio, I cooked for like the first about 20 miles. Like was running a pretty good pace, like felt amazing. But then those last like 6-7 miles, absolutely brutal. And I realized after the fact, I didn't eat anything during the race. And so like it was a situation where like the reason that those last several miles of the marathon were so bad, it wasn't necessarily because I wasn't physically capable or like physically in shape to do it. My body just ran out of energy. Gotcha. And like given that I had that awareness and that learning already, as my buddy's telling me this, I'm like thinking back to you know those last several miles of the marathon. I'm like, okay, I don't want that to happen again. Fine, like let's get something to eat. And I had taken it upon me to make us some lunch to have while we were out there during this adventure race. So it's like at this point it's probably like 11:30, maybe 12 p.m. and it was burritos that I decided to make for us. And so like I pull out 2 burritos from the backpack, and we are like, okay, like, you know, let's just keep moving. Like we can hike, or like, you know, basically like we can trail run and eat. And so we're there just like trucking along, like eating burritos, and I think we each had maybe like half of it, and we were like, okay, like that's probably good for now, like let's save the rest. And so like it was just funny, like having that visual of my buddy like right behind me, like running along, like just eating a burrito. It's like, what is this here? Like you don't ever see people doing this. But anyways, it's just funny to watch. So we eventually then get to the kayak, or excuse me, not the kayak, but the canoe portion of the race. And
so did you complete, this was like the last bit then, you're at your last...
No, so this actually was only like the middle part of the race.
Oh, okay, because you had some other transitions back.
There were multiple others that I didn't want to get into, just like not as exciting. But when we got to the canoe portion, this was a time when like it had been a little while after we made it through that really grueling section of the bike. And like at that, like it was shortly after that, and like when we were doing the running while eating burritos, where there was really nobody else around us. Like we did not see any other like race competitors or like teams for maybe like a couple miles.
How many people signed up? Like that might be worth knowing.
Yeah. So total entries for the race, there were about 50 teams.
Okay.
And teams ranged in size of 2 to 4 people.
Oh, you got more. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
But in he and I's case, like it was just the two of us who would want to do it, so we signed up as a team of 2.
Okay. If you had 4, did they give you 2 canoes?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
I should also mention too, like one of the elements of the race was that, given it was a team format, like in order to make like gathering checkpoints fair, each team member had to stay within 100 feet of one another throughout all times during the race. Okay. So you couldn't like send people out to like divide and conquer and go grab like
that could be dirty
punches at the checkpoints. Yep. So like y'all had to stay together throughout the whole time. But anyways, we got to the canoe portion, and there was 2 bikes there. There's all these canoes and 2 bikes there ahead of us, and we're like, wait, what the hell is this? Like, where is everybody? Like, what's going on? And there were some race officials right there, and they're like, you're in second. Like, let's go. Like you gotta keep moving. We're like,
no thinking. Go.
Holy shit! Like, my God, second place. Like, okay, and like we could see the people who were obviously then in first, right ahead of us, and we're then like, shit. Like, we gotta get going here throughout this canoe portion. And this honestly,
what was like the age group of everyone that was going there? Like, was this group ahead of you similar age?
So they were a little bit older actually. It was a father-son duo. The cool. Son was I'd say he was probably a little bit older than us. So I'm 27. This guy might have been 30, and then his dad was competing with him too. That's cool. These guys also, I remember seeing them
smoking you.
Well, and what was really crazy was, I remember when we were doing the really grueling portion of the bike, these guys, I think, were right in front of us. There were several of us doing this together, or like that really tough part of the bike together. And I remember seeing them and just like watching this older man go, and like he wasn't even in like great shape or anything, like, or at least like looking at him, you would not think that this man could move as fast as he did, or like was as strong or as fit as he actually was. But
the deceiving dad bod.
Yeah, like it was like the prime example of the capability of what a man can do despite having a dad bod. But anyways, yeah, so we're then out there in the canoe, and we knew that this was going to be a portion where it would be a little bit tough, because like, a lot of people have been in a canoe before, but like being in a canoe for 4 miles, and this was out on a lake, so like almost like open water, so it's not like you got like a current that'll help take you anywhere. We weren't fighting a current either, but 4 miles in a canoe, that was gonna be a long way. And
you probably didn't do anything to practice for that either, right?
I did some like rowing, like on the rower,
gym, okay,
but that was about the extent of it. Which, like, really, if you think about it, like, when you're rowing in a canoe, like, it's much more like your core, your back, and then like all throughout like your kind of thoracic spine region. But on the rower, like, you can get some of it like in your upper back. Maybe it was not a great translation, but figured it was better than nothing.
Yeah.
So we go, like, get all of our 4 checkpoints. It was like a total of 4 checkpoints that we had to get out on this lake. And we go, and the team that was in first place, like, they were a decent ways out ahead of us, and because unfortunately they had gained on us during the canoe portion, just further into show, dad bod wasn't messing around. But like, also too, while we were out there on the canoe, that was when we started to see all the rest of the teams, and it was a pretty neat feeling, like, to have them all behind us, like, during this race, after we had already had this massive mistake where, like, we thought we were totally screwed, like, basically from the beginning, because of like the whole like misjudgment on like where to go for the bike. But anyways, like things were moving well, and so we finished the canoe portion, get back on the bike, and then the next portion, we knew that we were going to like a cave, and we found out in doing some research prior to the event, there was this old 1950s like cavern, or I should say like it was actually a bar from the 50s, like in a like underground cavern up in the Bella Vista area, and like we like That's did some bizarre. Research, like learned a little bit about it, and like evidently it had been closed for years. Like even some of the people who we work with, they had mentioned that like, you know, they'd heard about it. There was actually one guy who told us he'd been in it before, but like even talking with some other people who are from the area, they're like I remember having a conversation with like I think somebody who cut my hair, and she had told me like, dude, there's no way you're going in that. Like you know, we heard about what kids did in there like back in high school, and like it's gross. Like there's no way the race is gonna take you there. Well, lo and behold, we show up to this cave, and like it actually like they had this big, like it was all sealed, but they had opened it up with like this big steel door, and like it was like holy shit, like, you know, you're putting your headlamp on and like descending down underground into this cave, and I thought the headlight that I had was decent. Literally could not see shit down there.
Oh my god.
It was unbelievable. Like I like to like, you know, feel like you've seen like dark before. This was like next level. Or like I guess if you've ever been like on a cave tour somewhere and your guide like turned off the lights.
Yep.
Like that is basically what it felt like, with the exception of like this little lamp on my head that like truly like I could see the ground right like in front of my feet, but that was all the more like benefit that I could get out of this light, because it was just that dark and my light evidently was just not bright enough. But
that's kind of like I mean, we were talking about night riding, mountain biking yesterday, and you know, you ride with a light on your handlebar and a light on your helmet, so you can kind of see two positions. And yeah, if you just have like a normal headlamp, you can't see crap. You just like see the few trees in front of you, but you're kind of riding blind. But I would imagine if you're running or hiking or whatever the hell you're doing, like any light would be good. Mm-hmm. But you're saying that it was just like
it was just that dark,
so dark that it didn't matter. It wouldn't.
Also, too, like I was figuring, so like throughout the gear gathering process, when I was buying some of the stuff that I knew I would need, like I figured, oh, like whatever, like, you know, looks like a good deal on Amazon should be good enough. Yeah, no, like I definitely skimped there on the headlamp. So, you know, lesson learned for the future. But anyways, like that was just like a really neat portion there, because it was also like so massive, like to be under there.
It wasn't like you know, whatever. It was wide open.
No, so it was totally wide open, because like it used to be a nightclub back in the day.
Oh, and that's crazy.
Yeah.
You said it was a bar. I just like assumed a little hole in the ground.
Yeah, I definitely undersold it there. Like it was actually like a nightclub. So like,
oh, that's cool.
Like you can look up pictures and like see like people down there, like, you know, on the big dance floor and whatnot. But yeah, just like a really neat portion of the race there. And so, anyways, we get out of there and we get back on the bike, and we knew that this was going to be like this next section of the bike would be our longest. So at this point,
go? You just went to the bottom of the cave, essentially got your hole punch and booked it right
and then
back
came
out.
back out. Yep.
Okay.
Yep. And we
they should have played rave music so that
that would have been great. That would have been great.
Have a bartender.
Have some lights. Yeah. But we knew then that the next portion would be our longest bike portion. So like when I say longest bike portion, it was a total of like, we knew to expect roughly like 26 miles in total of biking. We knew that the next portion of biking would be about half of that distance. Okay. So we knew we were going to be in for it. And at this point, like it's starting to get like a little bit later in the day. It's probably like maybe like 2:00 at this point.
Okay.
So like we are starting to really kind of like push it in terms of the amount of time
so that we 5 hours in.
We're 5 hours in at this point.
Laps.
Yep,
okay.
Exactly. So been out there a long time, and we knew we had a big biking portion coming up, and we're out there going. We ended up like running into this other group of guys who we kind of rode with for a while, and At one point, we ended up getting separated because like my buddy and I were gonna go look for a different checkpoint, and they were gonna go do something else that we didn't think was a good move. But anyways, we're going, and like it's getting to a point too where
what are those conversations like? Are you all just like I know you're being competitive, like you want to win, but I assume that you're out there just having a blast and you don't actually care. Like
I would say like at that point, like these guys it was a third place group. Okay. So like, yeah, there was some lighthearted conversations, but like they also like, you know, were after it and wanted to win too.
Okay. So you're probably not revealing your full hand, but you're laughing along.
Okay. Yeah, totally. Like we're not like necessarily like talking race strategy, but like, you know, a little bit of like shooting the shit, and then also just like truly huffing and puffing because like it was this very long stretch on the bike, and it's over like, you know, like you mentioned earlier, like some pretty technical stuff, like a lot of rocks, a lot of roots, and like just the sheer mileage that we were like going through at this point was quite a bit. And anyways, Brendan and I at this point were both like starting to get dangerously low on water. Okay. And unfortunately, like we are out like in a pretty rural area at this point, so like it was like, you know, what do we do here? Like we actually did find out that the team who we were riding with at this point, this other group of guys, they actually had brought like a filter, so they were able to refill their bags, their like camelbacks at the lake with fresh water. We didn't do that, so like miss on our part there. But what's also really neat about this particular area of Bella Vista is that the folks who live out there, like right on the trail system, some of them will leave out coolers with drinks in them. And so, you know, we're kind of just like banking on that. Like, all right, like we just got to find somebody with a cooler. Like it's totally a shot in the dark, but like it's a possibility. Mm-hmm. And fortunately, like as we're riding, we come up on a cooler, flip it open, full of water. And we're like, fuck yes, like this is exactly what we needed. Like this is a freaking sign right here. So we go and like take a few. I think we even like threw a few bucks in the cooler just to like give a little thank you to you know, like the person who lives there, and so that way they can, you know, go out and buy water for the next person. Yeah. Well,
we took the whole cooler.
Threw it on the bike. Yeah. But actually, the thing about this particular stop that really made it great and so memorable was not the fact that we were able to like truly be saved and have more water, but there was a second cooler sitting out there, and we're like, huh, okay, like what's in here? And we flip it open, it's just a cooler full of Mountain Dew. I'm like, holy shit, like I don't drink much pop and definitely don't drink like Mountain Dew, but my buddy, he's like, dude,
the sugar,
that is what we need right here. Yeah. And so he and I both take a Mountain Dew, and we actually then decided to like just take a little break and kind of kick back and enjoy it a little bit. And so we ended up each drinking like 1.5 Mountain Dews just sitting there. But like, I'll tell you, that like little rush from like the sugar, like I never really like had or like felt like a sugar high before, but I guess like, you know, when you're,
I mean, isn't that what those gel packets are? It's pretty much just sugar. It's like carbs, just for your body to burn just pure, in the next hour or so.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Like I had some of those in the past, but like never really felt like as much of a benefit from them. But like in an endurance race like this, like it truly made all the difference. Like have a little bit of sugar. So anyways, you know, we're drinking these Mountain Dews and we're like, dude, like this is it. Like, and we're feeling like great afterwards. And so after that, we hop back on the bike, and we know that like there's just a little bit further to go. And the rest of the portion here, I should also mention, like it was only biking that we had left to do to end up like, you know, ultimately like getting back and finishing the race. And there were only like probably like 5 more checkpoints. But what got really frustrating was that with these checkpoints, like at this point we are as remote, like as far away from the starting point as we would be during the race. And what we found was that like whether it was due to like people messing with stuff or like there just being issues or miscommunications with the race team, in some of these areas where we were expecting to find checkpoints, they just were not there. And like we even like ended up seeing some other teams, and they'd be like running around trying to look for these checkpoints as well. Couldn't find them. And that like created, you know, a little bit of like, you know, some struggle, some strife. But like we talked with one of the race officials that we saw at one point, and he was just like, you know, he had heard that like other teams or when I say he had heard other teams, so there were other teams like in the same vicinity as us, and he was aware that like people could not find this checkpoint. So he like, you know, we asked him about it. He said, don't even worry about it. Just keep moving. We're like, okay, awesome. So like we knew it wouldn't count against us because like the checkpoint just like straight up was not there. And anyways, we eventually get to the point where we are like starting to make our way back to Bentonville, and we knew that there would be some like big uphill climbs on our way back that way. And of course then like my chain starts popping off.
Oh
my
gosh.
cassette.
You had to have
like,
a backup, right?
Well, did not have a backup chain, but fortunately the chain was not breaking. It was just popping off. Like something was up with my gearing ratio.
Okay.
And I'm like, you have got to be kidding me. Like we have literally made it this far. We only have like probably like 5 more miles to go, and like we're trying to do these uphill like stints we're actually on dirt road at this point, so like off trail, but like doing like gravel or dirt roads, and like my freaking chain will just not stay on my bike. And like you have got to be freaking kidding me. Like we are this close to the finish line, this close, and like just continue to have all of these issues. Well, anyways, like we eventually get there, and like, or I should say, like,
you probably
get
could have just
uphill.
pushed it up there.
Like at some points, I was just like having to walk my bike because it was like any like incremental stress that I would put on my bike when I was in like my lowest gear, it would just always like pop off.
Gotcha.
And so, gosh, yeah. So like did like a little bit of like a field repair on my bike there, and it was enough to get us to keep moving. And anyways, then we knew that the last few checkpoints were back in like the Bentonville area. So we're like, okay, like we just got to go and try to get those, because at this point, like we only had about 30 minutes left in the race, and we were still like, you know, a few miles from the finish line.
Okay.
And so we're then like back in like the slaughter pin area where you and I were riding yesterday, and like we're looking for these checkpoints, and again like having these issues like where we can't find them. And we actually ran into this other team of women who actually like are part of like the women's mountain bike like club out here. So like they're like all pretty serious, like all pretty good. And we actually asked them like have you seen this checkpoint, because we can't find it. And they were just like, no, like we can't find it either. And so then my buddy and I are just like, okay, like shit, like we gotta go, like we gotta at least make sure that we finish this thing, because the worst thing to happen would be like we don't even cross the finish line within the like allotted 8 hours. And at this point it is really probably like 4:30, probably a little bit after 4:30. So we're like, all right,
you got till 5, right?
I had till 5. So we're like, we just gotta go, we just gotta finish. And so we go then and just like bust our asses to get back to Bentonville and the finish line, and we eventually get there, and like it was just so neat to cross the finish line there. Like first of all, like holy shit, like we were just like literally moving, like out racing, adventuring for the past 8 hours. We actually ended up covering more than 40 miles, so like crazy amount of ground covered. And when we finished, it was just the two of us finishing at the same time.
No other teams to distract.
No other teams, and it also made for like such a more intimate experience when we crossed the finish line, because like in the races that I've done in the past, like, you know, if you're doing a half marathon, something like that, I've done a few of those, or like other road races, like there's a bunch of people crossing the finish line at the same time, and it's basically just like okay, like as soon as you cross, like, you know, go find, like, you know, if somebody's there watching you, go find them, and then just like get to your car and like grab your things and like leave. But here it was like my wife was there at the end, my buddy's fiance was right there too, and they were like, you know, cheering us on. We could see them as we were crossing, and like some of the race officials came up and like gave us a beer. They gave us another burrito, so like second burrito of the day,
another Mountain Dew, a beer.
We actually did get another Mountain Dew when we finished. But
probably by choice. Probably had a selection. Be like, this one's so
yeah. But anyways, man, yeah, like through all of that, like if you want to talk about some high quality fun, like adventure race is the way to go, because like, you know, it's one of those things where with an adventure race, like yes, you can prepare, but there's also just like so much that like you don't know is going to be part of the race until you get there. And then also like during the race, like as you could, you know, tell, like shit goes wrong all the time, and it's just all about like, you know, how you adapt, overcome. Like biggest thing was just like you gotta like laugh through it, can't take it too seriously. One of my buddies always likes to say, you know, you can't take life too seriously because you'll never make it out alive. It's like like you true that, right?
Yeah, Jesus Christ. I did like a Tough Mudder, or it was Warrior Dash, and that was just like a 5K with obstacles in it. But that was like nothing like you know, coordinates and whatnot. I want to have another episode on this. We did like a gambler event where you're doing a road rally and you show up to random coordinates and do random things. But that's cool. I had never heard of like an adventure race to this aspect. So you guys actually finished within the 8-hour time period, and like you placed, right?
Yeah. So yeah, thanks for bringing me back there. So it ended up being like, I think our total finish time was around like 7 hours and 50 minutes.
Oh my God.
So like, you know, we were pushing it. And a lot of the teams didn't even finish. But anyways, we knew, like based off of the amount of checkpoints that we got, and then also talking with some of the other teams who were like some of the top finishers as well, or like first ones to cross the finish line, and knowing how many checkpoints they got, like we knew we'd finish well. And we decided then, like, okay, like we gotta stick around for this, like, you know, be here for the awards ceremony, because, you know, we're thinking we're gonna turn out pretty good.
And so you had no idea at this point.
No, like because they would like the race team would have to go and then collect like the checkpoint punch cards from each team.
You might have saw other teams ahead of you, but they could have been scored way below you.
Right, because like they may have missed more checkpoints than us.
Okay.
And so it then was a process and a period for the race officials to collect the punch cards from everybody, take note of the time that everyone finished. Actually, like honestly, probably less than 25% of the teams that entered like even crossed the finish line.
Oh my God.
Within 8 hours. So like a lot of teams like didn't even finish, or like didn't even get back to like the start and finish area until like well beyond 8 hours. So
did that immediately disqualify them, or
yeah,
it did? Wow.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
So like for all of those people, or like, you know, really for the entire like, you know, race crew, like everybody who was racing, you know, we then have to wait to get final scores, and it took them a while. They also did some other like awards things, and like they kind of made like a little like festival out of it in downtown Bentonville. So like there was some other entertainment and whatnot. But anyways, it came time for the award ceremony, and
did you get a chance? Like, I assume during all this, like while you're waiting for the big hype of the announcement, are you getting a chance to bullshit with all the different other teams?
Oh yeah. And
any like notable stories from those groups?
I don't think so. Like it basically, like a lot of the stories were everybody else had issues with like finding checkpoints that we couldn't find.
Okay.
So it allowed us to know that, or at least feel pretty confident that we would like be finishing pretty well.
Okay.
But anyways, yeah, like award ceremony came out then, and we ended up taking home 3rd place. So we were pretty stoked about it. You know, first ever adventure race. Like considering everything that like happened during, like again, like with the little miscues and chains popping off and whatnot, like we said okay. However, though, like those 1st and 2nd place teams, like the team that came in 2nd place, it was the father son duo who was a little bit ahead of us, and like they definitely like they beat us for sure. The team who won, it was these two women who we did not see on the course the entire time, and so we're like,
how? Oh, it wasn't even the girls that you saw mountain biking.
It was
okay,
this totally separate group, and like at one point, like we had chatted with them a little bit, like, oh, like, you know, congrats, like, you know, where'd you find the checkpoints? And they were just like, nothing like ever came of the conversation. They were just kind of like, oh yeah, like, you know, yeah, we got that one there, yeah.
Very
we're like,
vague.
okay, like, how did you find it? But nobody else could freaking find it. So, anyways, that leaves Brennan and I in a position where we're like, first place is ours next year.
So you are gonna do it again?
Oh, for sure.
Oh,
yeah,
that's
it was
great.
Like such an awesome experience. Like I have not done any more adventure races like that since we did that back in April, but like one of the like coolest like competitive like activities that I've done ever, and it was like so much fun versus like just doing like the road races. Like the road races are great, don't get me wrong, but with this where it truly is a lot more of just like digging deep and like also being out there in nature, because like there were like probably vast majority of the race, like it was just my buddy and I out there like running through the woods or biking through the woods, and it was just like such a awesome freaking experience.
I love that. I like the team element of it too, where you're just like you
pushing
guys are
each other,
pushing your heads together to try to figure this out.
Yeah.
You know, pulling each other forward. That's really cool. I haven't heard of a lot of races like that. I know there's something over in Europe where it's like Hell Mountain or something, and I watched a video of this. They literally start in the snowy peaks and they mountain bike all the way to the bottom of this thing.
Yeah, I've seen that too.
This starts like hundreds of people wiping out, sliding everywhere. But that's I don't know, that came to mind. But that's not the same, right? You're just going down to the bottom, guided finish line. There's no coordinates. You're not like, you know, fighting the elements.
Yeah.
That's sweet. So you did that last fall?
Last April. So only
you got
like 7 months ago.
You gotta get training, man.
I know. I gotta get back on it. Yeah. Fortunately, you know, weather here in Arkansas is pretty good throughout the winter months. You know, versus being in Ohio and Michigan where I was previously, so it makes it a lot easier then to get out and train, like whether I'm running or biking all through like December, January, February. So yeah, I'm anxious to get back out there and get back on it to make sure that I come home with number 1 next year.
They probably do a lot of the same. Do you know if anybody who finished had done that before? Like I would have to imagine that it's always the same concept, but they mix up the points and you know, they tweak it so it's a unique experience for everyone coming back.
Yeah, great question. That was actually not something that came up in conversation. Like whether any other teams had done adventure races before. However, with regard to this particular race, this actually was the very first year that they did it. So like it was everybody's first time doing this particular adventure race.
And that probably led to a lot of the mishaps with the checkpoints and whatnot. I'm sure the organizers learned a ton as well.
Yeah. And like they were super receptive of feedback, like on, you know, how they can improve next year, and you know, just like in the spirit of adventure racing, I'm sure that it's going to be totally different, right? Because like, you know, wouldn't be quite fair to the rest of the folks if they were to just like do the same thing over again.
Always include the cave diving, obviously.
That like element being so unique, they're not gonna do away with that. That'll definitely stay. But yeah, man, like just overall like phenomenal 10 out of 10 experience, and yeah, there were a lot of moments there that like freaking sucked, but looking back on it now has without a doubt been one of the neatest like physical challenges that I've done in my life.
Yep, that's the whole premise of this show is like people signing up for grueling experiences, and you know, it might have sucked at the time, but you're going to talk about it forever because it's so unique.
Yep.
Well, awesome. I mean, is there anything else that comes to mind that you would want to share on that event? I'm always going to try to summarize these these episodes to let you share anything about yourself. I don't know if you got anything going on you want to share before we close this up.
Just one thing that I would leave for the audience, I would say, this doesn't even necessarily relate to just like the adventure race piece, but going back to what I had mentioned at the beginning of the episode about how like I, had never really done much running, but I'd seen my other buddies going out and doing like half marathons and then marathons. Like I never thought that would be something that I could do, but I decided, you know what, like I believe in myself, I can do this, and like was able to accomplish these feats that I never thought I would be tackling in my life. And so I would just say, like, don't ever doubt yourself or think that you're not capable of doing something, because like if you put in, like the time and the effort to plan out how exactly you're going to train, and then be disciplined, stick to it, like you can accomplish those goals, and like you can get it done. I confidently believe that anybody can do it.
And even if like, I'll even say this, like a lot of people get just decision paralysis where like, I feel like if you did not finish that race, or if you had a mishap halfway through, it would still be something you would talk about, because
oh, totally,
like, I mean, who cares?
The experience, right?
Yeah, who cares if you failed 25 miles in? Like, that was still like really cool and something you got to do with your buddy that no one else has done.
Yep, exactly. Life is all about the
and
journey.
Like, you weren't really in risk at any point. You had your phone. You could get out of there. You could, hey, wife, come pick me up.
Right.
Bring me a burrito. That's really cool. I really appreciate you sharing it. I hope the audience enjoys it. We'll just go ahead and end there, unless you got anything else you want to share about yourself before we close this up.
I'm good. I appreciate you having me, and just thankful that you and Chelsea and the girls made the trip down here to Arkansas to see us.
Hell yeah, let's watch some football and enjoy the rest of this week together.
Go Lions.
Lions.